Some guys that couldn't figure out how to hang these things up.
We have a quorum. Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock on Thursday, May 25th, 2023, and I call this meeting of the Bellevue Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Van Horn?
Mr. Hankins?
Present.
Mr. Ritz? Mr. Arney?
Present.
Mr. Sims? Ms. Cutsforth?
Present.
Mr. Ackley?
Here.
Mr. Bennett? Mr. Jacobson?
Present.
We have a quorum. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located at the back wall of this chamber. At this time, I would ask everyone to put their cell phones on vibrate or turn them off so as not to disturb the meeting proceedings. At this time, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2023 regular meeting.
If the chair pleases, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented of our April 27th meeting.
Second.
Motion by Jacobson, second by Ackley. Please vote.
Three voted yes. Mr. Arney and Ms. Cutsforth abstained. Motion carried.
At this time, I'd like to accept into the record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts regarding each application. Staff, any updates?
No additional information was received from the public. I do have additional information for item 3A, but I will go through that when we get to it. Just, they did complete they have satisfied the technical deficiency. They did provide an updated landscape plan, so that is taken care of, but no additional information from the public.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one item on the consent agenda.
Actually, we'll back up. I make a motion to approve of the record that's been provided for each application.
Second.
Got ahead of myself.
You're fine.
All voted yes. Motion carried.
Okay, now we move to the consent agenda. We have one item on it tonight. I do want to mention the public hearing procedures. When it comes time to have a public hearing, I will read the item and I'll call the applicant up, and then after that, I will open the public hearing to the public who wish to speak on a particular matter. And after that, we'll close the public hearing. The applicant does get a rebuttal, and then we will turn it over to the commissioners at that point for each application. This one is a consent agenda item, however. 2A, request to rezone lots 1 and 2, Child's Estate Acres Replat 7, being a replat of Lot 8, replat Child's Estate Acres, and Lot 23, Child's Estate Acres from RG-50 and RS-84 to RG-50 and RS-84 for the purpose of a lot line adjustment and small subdivision plat, lots 1 and 2, Child's Estate Acres Replat 7. Applicants Bonifacio Asensio and Eric Cano. General location 1001 and 1003 Virginia Street. Case numbers Z-2304-09 and S-2304-05. Is there anybody among the commissioners or the public who wishes to take this matter off the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. Commissioners, is there a motion?
If the chair pleases the chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jacobson, second by Ackley. Please vote.
All voted yes, motion carried.
Okay, public hearing 3A. Oh, I'm sorry. That will be going before the city council on June 20th, next month. 3A, a request to rezone lots 1 and 2, Walnut Grove Estates replat 1 being a replat of lot 2, Walnut Grove Estates from AG to RE for the purpose of single-family residential development, small subdivision plat lots 1 and 2, Walnut Grove Estates replat 1, and waiver of section 6-4 of the subdivision regulations regarding street sign standards. Applicant Eric Carlson, general location 5007 Platteview Road, case numbers Z-2303-08 and S-2303-04. Staff updates?
No update, just kind of want to elaborate on the staff memo. The applicant is requesting this item be continued indefinitely. It was continued from our last month's meeting. They discovered a technical issue with the survey. It could take them, up to several months to figure that out. So rather than keep bringing it back, if it's continued indefinitely, we'll just go ahead and re-advertise and re-notify neighbors at such time they're ready to come back to the Planning Commission. So just would recommend that it be continued indefinitely tonight.
Okay, thank you. We did advertise this as a public hearing item, so I will open it for a public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to come up and speak on this matter? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioner Arnie?
Upon the applicant's request, I would make a motion to continue this item indefinitely.
Second by Hankins.
Motion by Arnie, second by Hankins. Please vote.
All voted yes, motion carried.
Moving on to application 3B, a request for a conditional use permit for lots 1 through 6 and the north 15 feet of lot 19A, Wilson and Johnson subdivision for the purpose of a 50-foot telecommunications tower replacement. Applicant Christy Eichhorn for Verizon Wireless. General location 406 East Mission Avenue, case number CUP-2303-02. Staff?
Yes, as previously mentioned, between the time that the packet went out and tonight, the applicant has satisfied the technical deficiency listed in the staff report. They did update the landscape plan with the additional detail that staff requested, so they are okay in that regard. I'll just offer a brief summary. Ms. Eichhorn, if you want to come up too, you can get signed in and get ready to speak. This is a replacement tower for an existing one that's there. Same height. The one that's there is a stealth flagpole design. This one would not be the flagpole design, but it is the same height, 50 feet. Essentially, they are just updating the technology associated with the tower and be moving it over just, a foot or two from the current location. Applicant did provide some street views of what the tower would look like as you are eastbound on Mission Avenue. It will not be visible going westbound because of the mature tree cover that is there. Other than that, staff is recommending approval of this request, and I'll let Ms. Eichhorn go ahead and present the application on behalf of Verizon.
So there's not too much to add. That was a pretty good summary. Essentially, we're upgrading our antennas and our radios, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make them work with the existing flagpole design, and the structural analysis just said it wasn't going to work. So the next best thing would be to keep it as close to the existing flagpole as possible with a monopole design and add new antennas to the top of the pole. So the new pole will not be a flagpole, it will just be a single monopole design. It'll be the same height and just slightly wider than the existing pole. It will be located 1 foot from where the existing flagpole is, and once within 30 days of the new monopole going up, the existing flagpole will come down.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioners, thoughts, questions, comments?
If there's no discussion on this matter, I would make a motion.
I did have one question,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Ackley, if I may.
Yep.
I have one question for the applicant. Just to put this on the record, you get asked this 1,000 times. You're trying to upgrade your towers to get to the 5G and whatever comes beyond. There's no change in terms of meeting FCC regulations on radio wave emissions or anything else. It's still compliant.
It is still compliant, that's
Okay,
correct.
great.
So with the new tower, we actually have to go back through all of our regulatory work just because it's a new tower.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Many times when we get a cell phone applicant, the public's interested in that answer. So thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant while she's up here?
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve this application based on conformance with section 6.06 of the zoning ordinance, as well as a lack of perceived negative impact to the surrounding area.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second by Jacobson.
Motion by Ackley, second by Jacobson. Please vote.
All voted yes, motion carried.
Okay, that goes before the city council for June 20th. And moving to 3C, it's a request to approve the Parks Master Plan, applicant City of Bellevue. Staff?
I think I will go ahead at this time and turn it over to our folks from Lamprey Nearson. Believe they have a presentation for you folks.
That's correct. Thank you, Tammy. Sign in. Well, thank you to the Planning Commission for having me today. I'm Jeff Spees with Lamprey Nearson, and we worked with the City of Bellevue along with sub-consultants M-Space and Lovegren, as well as Ballard King, to put together a parks master plan. We've got a few slides that kind of cover from the approach, all the way through some recommendations. Just want to talk about this. So just to begin, the theme of as you kind of see the cover, open for adventure. Throughout the planning process, this idea of parks being a place for all, but to define individuals and families and be able to define their own use in parks, and taking advantage of the topography and the history of Bellevue in spirit of service. Open for adventure was a good cohesive theme to the plan. And from the beginning of this project, Bellevue said, okay, from planning perspective, we would like to do an update to our master plan because both the city of Bellevue and the community is really looking to improve a number of park experiences. There is a large percentage, comparatively to other cities, of percentage of acreage that's dedicated to parkland, yet access and visibility to those parks is limited. And with a limited budget and making decisions around what to maintain and invest in, wanted to set some goals and priorities for the plan that would help guide the city for investments in the future. So it's really about connectivity. How do we strategically allocate resources for Bellevue and be set up for success in the future. So the project was structured with a working committee, which you see the folks here with community development, public works, planning, and Parks and Rec with Mr. Shada, and Doug Clark was with us before. We'd meet just about every other week to kind of go through the different phases of the project and kind of continue to hear what we're hearing from the public and what we're learning in the data, and then make our next steps every week. So leadership-wise, the project was led by a steering committee, of which a couple folks from the Planning Commission, Commissioner Jacobson and Cutsforth, are part of that steering committee. And so it's a good mix of office engagement with us, the public school system, elected officials, and community leaders and institutions like Fontenelle Forest and the Chamber of Commerce. The project started with initial kind of discovery and analysis. We had an assessment of every park and every piece of equipment, and gave that a rating of poor to excellent. And that's mapped. We have a GIS map to provide to you with all of those assessments. And after that, and along with interviews with stakeholders and past research, then we kind of moved into engagement with surveys and public engagement. And then at the end, kind of taking all of that data and aligning it with strategies and action steps, and ultimately investments in new amenities and improvements to the parks. So this was the kind of state of the parks for Bellevue. So you can see there's 55 total parks. I mentioned that 14% of total land, and that is using standards with the National Recreation and Park Association. That for a city of Bellevue size, it's 9 times the average acres per resident of, and then there's number of parks per resident 2 times more than the average per capita. So it has plenty of parks. It's just a matter of allocating those resources effectively.
Can I stop you and ask you a question there?
Sure.
The 14%, is that based on land owned by the city of Bellevue?
No, that's with
The entire
land
city jurisdiction?
that's owned by Bellevue and that's dedicated to parkland. That doesn't include all land that's owned by the city of Bellevue.
So tell me again how you get to 14%, I'm sorry.
So the total acreage in Bellevue,
Yeah.
of that, 14% of it is dedicated to parkland, so 756 acres.
Is it city limits or ETJ?
It's the city limits and then the ETJ, yes. Mm-hmm.
Seems high.
So throughout the engagement, throughout the entire project, it began with interviews with city staff, elected leaders. We met with every city council member, the mayor's office, met with the police department, parks maintenance staff, and school officials. And then we had focus groups as well with other community leaders. Had a survey at the beginning of the project. It's about kind of values and how do people prefer to use parks. And then we had an additional survey near the end, which had a QR code in every single park, and individuals could, they're visiting that park, they could scan that QR code and let us know their experience they're having right now. Who is in that park? Do you see families, individuals, dogs? What are people doing? How would you rate your experience today? Was it easy to get here or not? So we had that survey, and we had 5 workshops. One workshop just dedicated for youth. And then after the workshops, and in those workshops, I should say, we had, you would design your own ideal park, kind of based on values that the table had together, and controlled with cost of what park amenities would actually cost. They had a realistic budget to do so. And then that followed up in the fall with focus groups with real estate, community, realtors and developers, economic development, and recreation. And then summarizing all of the recommendations, we had an open house in November, and then we began finishing up the plan. The themes throughout the engagement and both the public engagement and the stakeholder engagement was that there's a need to continue to provide consistency around maintenance and safety and that predictable experience that people would have as they visit the parks. Are they connected and accessible? Both accessible from kind of a universal design standpoint. Could an individual with developmental disabilities be able to use that park? A park that was continually brought up was Stonecroft Park as an example, one that the community really liked and saw as something they'd like to see in the future. So that sort of set the standard perhaps for parks in the future. And then just accessing those parks by other modes than just driving. If you wanted to ride your bike or walk to the park, was that difficult to do? How are the sidewalk conditions around it? There's real interest in new amenities to the parks that people said they would have to sometimes leave the city of Bellevue in order to have some of those experiences. And then how do the parks relate to the overall identity of Bellevue? And as Bellevue continues to grow, how do the parks continue to enhance the identity? So the entire city of Bellevue parks system, we kind of broke it up into 6 zones. And you kind of see northwest, west central. This is on the west of Highway 75. And northwest is at the county line, or at the city of Bellevue line at Harrison Street. And then west central kind of runs all the way to Highway 370, southwest. And then we have in the northeast sections of Fontenelle zone, then kind of where we are today is Old Town zone. And then we have this area just east of the Air Force Base to the river, the South Plains zone. And that helped us to try to see how we could balance the system. Where do we have investment? Do we have too many community parks versus in one zone versus another? That's a real interest in the future. How do we create some equity amongst the zones? So then kind of comes down to a few kind of main recommendations that there's a need to increase funding to parks, and there's a number of ways to do that, but in this putting park improvements into the capital improvement plan, and then finding other funding, so other partners in the community, but also other grant funding to invest in parks. We can create a series of phases in each zone that's around planning, creating an initial layout ideas for the parks, creating and then developing recommendations and allocating funds, and then ultimately putting that together in building and implementation. And then another just kind of first thing out of the gate would be communication and wayfinding, both from a digital experience, but also in the community. How would people know what amenities are near them and get to those parks? And then if you're at that park, how do you know what you can do when you're there? Around the theme of connectivity and accessibility, so we'll talk about this, that we want to prioritize aligning the parks around corridors and thinking of them as a corridor concept, and then using trails and greenways to connect those parks. And then how do we make use of on-street facilities and parking and sidewalks as a way to access those parks. Throughout the plan, we have every park has a park layout plan. You kind of see as an example of one there of American Heroes Park that provides the park itself, and then what would be some early actions we could take on that park today? How does it meet the standards around design for the type of park that it is? And then what would be things that you can do there today? And then the future amenities we would design it. Just want to talk about a couple of new park experiences. This is just a concept. You would see the Daniel Farm, a recreation lake. It's about 37th and Capehart. That would be a new lake with both a recreation trail that's more kind of paved like a Lake Zorinsky experience, and then more of a wooded trail as well inside of that, as well as space for dog parks and an event lawn and docks, and for you could do kayaking, stand-up paddleboard. This is another thing that came up quite a bit is water access, west of Highway 75, and so this is a concept that put together and seemed to have a lot of interest in both in the community and the elected leadership. So to do a lot of these ideas, another thing we mentioned that percentage of the city of Bellevue that is dedicated to parkland and the number of parks, and so what do we do with some of these parks that aren't useful today as they're not functioning? I mean, they're technically they meet the definition of a park, but and most people may not know that. They may be just a empty, empty field on the corner of a development. So came up with some ideas for if we were to transfer use of a park to something else. How do we do that? If we could sell that for development, transfer it to the city for just dedicate a new use, perhaps provide additional land to adjacent landowners. If an organization would be interested, if there's alignment with a nonprofit organization or a community-based organization, could they use that parkland for something else, like a community garden or raised beds for seniors, or access to a food pantry, to get end cap, like at Washington Park. Maybe you could use a nearby park for some community gardens that they would maintain, and be benefiting that organization, and they would be responsible for the maintenance of that. And we have a list of parks that we used a set of criteria around how we would decide how those parks would make that list, and then they're in the plan that if that were to be something to do in the future, these would be parks that we could look at identifying a potential new use. We have an interactive database that will be provided to the City of Bellevue on the bellevue.net that the public could use, and I can kind of go through this if you like in a moment. But essentially, you could type in any park on there, and it will tell you where that park is, what the amenities are. It'll show you where it's at on the map. You could type in your address, and it'll put a pin in the map of where you typed in that address, and it'll show you the parks that are nearby that. You search by, I'm looking for a shelter. You can type in shelter. It will then pull up the parks that provide a shelter, if that's what you like to do. So that's something that we have in the overall final plan. And then, so we developed 3 different funding scenarios for how to fund these investments. We had just a trend scenario, an aggressive or adventurous scenario, and then a kind of a moderate scenario that assumed a 1.25% increase. So, and that's still, even if you were to do that moderate scenario for funding, which is really tied to what we heard in the community engagement, some of those improvements, where you were still, you kind of see in the lower quartile of overall park spending for cities that are of similar size of Bellevue. Finally, I just want to say that the Parks Master Plan first needed to make sure it was in alignment with past plans in Bellevue. So that's meeting up with the Fort Crook Road redevelopment plan that was approved last year. The overall long-range vision of Heartland 2050. So you kind of see the state of Nebraska outdoor recreation plan, the Offutt Joint Land Use Plan, and then with Trails Have Our Respect, or THOR, they have they have presence at Swanson Park and Jewel Park in Bellevue. So we wanted to make sure that this fit in with their overall surface trail feasibility study. And then it does set up to be consistent with the upcoming comprehensive plan update and the long-range transportation plan. So that's where we are now, and I'll stop my remarks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward and speak? If you could come to the podium and sign in and state your name and address for the record, please. And Jeff, don't go too far, because I'm sure we'll have questions for you to answer.
Oh, yes, glasses. Okay, thank you. Actually, my first question is
could you say your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Bonnie McFarland. I live off of 53rd and Harrison by Aspen Park. And I'm curious, is there any plans for Aspen Park at this time? You might not have to hear me. Okay. Well,
We can Yeah.
Go ahead. We'll take kind of all of the questions that everybody has, and then we'll kind of answer them all at once. So
Okay.
if you have any other questions, let us know. Otherwise, we can.
Well, I got something to say.
Perfect.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I live by Aspen Park. That is my backyard. I've been there 47 years with my husband and I. And I would like to have gone to other meetings, but my husband, Gordon, he was weakened with blood cancer, so this is the first time I've really been out. And I would like to have come to other meetings. As my thoughts and experience of living with the park for 47 years as my backyard at the meetings, Don Predister and I have had a few conversations, and I think he understands that I value the park and the area, and I look out for it. We have donated 3 autumn blaze trees to it, and I've tried to keep people from damaging the park or the animals that call it home. Everything from people from shooting birds, as well as the one that shot Donna's horse who lived on the other side of the park in her meadow, to hacking trees with branches, knives, and hatchets. People have set fires. We have put one out even in the old gazebo, or driving cars on the ground, tearing up turf and leaving roots, or hitting trees. As was the one drunk driver, when the trees were just saplings, we called the police and guided them by phone to where he was. They were able to find him, and he replaced some of the trees, but he got in another accident and died. But as the dirt bikes and go-karts that haunt the park day and night, I know this is lengthy, but I feel I have merit. And I answered a posting on Nextdoor. It has several postings on the problem with dirt bikes and how dangerous they are on the trails or in the parks, and not moving for walkers or women pushing carriages. Also, the noise factor is huge and very irritating to have when you have your windows open, trying to enjoy the fresh air. There's 3 kids live on the other side of 48th Street that come down, and they have just taken over the park with their dirt bikes. And they claim it on the trail. I've heard that there wanted to be a road back there, and I'd like to know if they even live or reside by the park, or are they the parents that ignore the rules of the park? It is a park. Why mix vehicles with people walking to get sunshine and nature and not cement? We have so many dirt bikes back there, and people that come there day, night. This morning at 3:55 a.m., I was woke up by a motorcycle going in the back. That is not unusual. We have people that they live in that area. They live in this area. They live just catty corner from me. I have pictures of them. They're little kids on dirt bikes and go-karts. The parents give them the keys. Here you go. And here is a dirt bike. I respect the park. In fact, we're the ones who try to donate. We offered to donate $500 for a camera for when the pool was there, because we're tired of people that came in the pool late at night, diving off the diving board, jumping, yelling, drinking. So we said we would donate $500 for cameras so you could get the car license plates and such. Okay, I wrote this all out. Some discs from the disc players of the Frisbee golf. These are just the last 2 months that land in my yard. I don't care that land in the yard. I wish they would use the gate to get to them, but they jump our fence, they broke our post, and I've asked them, please use the gate and close it. And I used to drive a semi, but I never heard a sentence that could go with so many cuss words in my life as when I've asked them not to jump the fence. We've had 3 attempted break-ins. Our houses are like a candy store to the back. To the back there. We've had 3 attempted break-ins. When I was donating the trees, I happened to be looking out there, and here's a guy walking up our back steps, pretending to look for his Frisbee because it was down by the lilac bushes, and he was clear up by our patio. And I don't know. I wish people had more respect for the parks. You're putting good ideas, good money into improvements. The pool was a good example. They didn't respect it. They kept jumping over it. into the pool at nighttime. If you put you move the picnic table. This is not meaning to be mean or anything, but you put the picnic table back there by the tennis court. Well, so far this week, that picnic table that's by the tree, away from the rest of the playground, has been a good drug drop, great makeout place. And here's what I heard. It's a perfect height for sex. So that's the picnic table. Some of the worst visitors are from the park who are tearing up, live in our area, and they seem unaffected by the damage. And it is quoted to me, yes, the city will fix it up so they can damage it, and that's what I pay taxes for. I don't pay my taxes for them to do that. I have pictures of their kids on the go-karts out in the street. They're only like 11, 12 years old out on the street. The dad is riding it too. You have signs up all along in the parking lot. No vehicles past this point. Disregarded. I don't understand it. My dad would have killed me if I had disregarded the law like that. I live there 24/7. I have picked up on our fence line and our bushes dirty diapers. We're the trash along the fence line. Dirty diapers, food, used condoms, bottles of alcohol. I don't get it. But I do not want a cement road back there or a sidewalk. I understood that there's supposed to be a skate, possibly a skateboard place coming in. I wonder where it was going to be. Is there going to be lights? The music that is played back there loudly, because people drive their cars to the tennis court, they have the radio and all the car doors open. If you're a doctor, or if you come home from work and you want 20 minutes of that decompression silence, or you have surgery. My husband had huge surgeries. And the doctor says the best thing for you is rest and sleep. We can't get that. There's no guarantee that in 5 minutes you won't be barraged by noise of vehicles that don't belong there, radios that don't need to be on. They're out there in the nature. I'm sorry, but I like that park. I've lived there 47 years. I've watched over it. I have put fires out from firecrackers or fireworks. They start back there second week of June to after the 4th. We have hauled buckets of water out there. We lived there when it was a SID. We used to mow it. I had deer, fox, pheasants. We had all kinds of critters, and we enjoyed them all. We didn't ever think of harming them, but I liked the park. I moved there because I was used to open area. I lived in an open area, and when it was a SID, we all took care of it. Now it seems that there's a turn in respect. There's a turn in appreciation of what you all plan. You spend time going over maps, times over trying to figure out what's best, where the money can go best, what will serve the people. The minute you put it up, half the time it's destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for my speech so jumbly.
No problem, you're fine.
I'll go ahead and answer some of those questions, and Jeff, you can jump in too if I'm missing something. First of all, thank you for being one of the caring, responsible neighbors that live near the park. It sounds like we need more of those. One thing I will definitely say, we know that that's an area where we've had some issues. That has been a frustrating aspect, I believe, for our park staff that go in there and clean up graffiti and different things, and then it's back again. So, those types of items are touched on the park plan, in regards to security and safety, because obviously we want residents to feel safe when they come to use a neighborhood park. If you come and see things like graffiti, trash, that's not exactly a welcoming area.
Or the go-karts going around, right, and halfway chasing the Frisbee golfers off.
Right. As far as specific recommendations, there are park profiles for each park that we have in the city. on page 113 of the plan, which we do have a copy online. So it's a long plan, so you can look at it online if you want to. If you don't have online access, let me know and I can get you a hard copy. Specifically for Aspen, Sun Valley, a few of the things that are recommended. There's different levels of maintenance recommended for each park. Aspen is a level 1 and level 2 maintenance, and what that kind of means is addressing safety concerns, unsafe walkways, down branches and trees, erosion, repair, remove, replace broken, aged, deteriorating equipment. It's also things like comfort concerns, painting, replacement of outdated equipment, additional seating, maintaining and irrigating plantings throughout the growing season, replacement of dead trees, things like that. So it is identified as a level 1 and 2 maintenance. Also, some of the recommendations include things like reviewing the parking and traffic circulation for efficiency and safety, and improving the wayfinding and the crossings. We know that that's an issue. Update the disc golf amenity with new signage and equipment, remove and replace existing play structure with accessible natural play structure, adding picnic areas and shelters, dog waste receptacles, completing the park layout plan. This was an area where it was mentioned that, you know, there could potentially be room for a skate park. So that is something that could be looked at down the road. But again, things like safety concerns, security concerns are all going to come into play with that. And again, all those recommendations are outlined on page 113 of the plan. And again, thank you for, expressing all the things that are going on there. Again, that's, something we can pass along to, our police department. I guarantee our parks department is probably aware of some of the things that are happening. So what I can tell you is, feel free to email or call and let city staff know when things are coming up so that we can properly address them. Jeff, I don't know, is there anything that you can think of that I missed in that, or?
I was just going to say, Ms. McFarland, thank you for being so involved. Like Tammy said, that I think you had sent an email to us, and that was definitely during the engagement process. We got an email from you, and that helped to see what we were seeing when we had our own observations, but to have a neighbor say it helped validate a lot of what we talked about. And so I think part of the key from the design part is there's a way we could look at redesigning a portion of the park so that there's more eyes on the park, it's like a neighbor, and through making improvements to the disc golf course and a new play equipment, it activates all areas of the park so that there's just more people out there, and generally that drives out behavior that's nefarious. And so that's certainly what we want to see happen. And so yeah, you're right on track with the improvements. Yeah,
well,
thank you.
Half the nefarious is the kids, the people who live there. I'm not joking. The old people, the people that when we moved there, we were all for the park. I mean, we mowed it, we watched over it, we took care of it. And now there's newer kids, and things are changing. I see just how, just at nighttime in the parking lot, you will notice, I'm sure, tire marks.
Ma'am, can I have you come back up to the microphone, because we can't get you on the record if you're not at the microphone.
Do you really want me on the record?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry. If you notice on the parking lot, you will see tire tracks. They go around doing the donuts, around and around at nighttime. There has been a change in the atmosphere of the neighborhood, and there's been a change in people. And unfortunately, some of that change is they want their kids to have fun somewhere else. So when people buy the dirt bikes or the ATVs and such, go have fun, but it's someplace else. It's not in their neighborhood. The fireworks, I hate 4th of July. Why do we have to have fireworks at 8 a.m., let alone the ones that let off at 2 or 3? I hope you never experience this, but have you ever I've seen somebody wake up with dementia every time fireworks go off, and it's your mom. Makes you sick. People are out there 2, 3 in the morning with, I don't know what size, quarter dynamite. But that's just it. There are so many things there. I'm the one who calls in a lot of times when a tree limb falls or when the tree, is dead and breaks over. I call when there's other problems because I value that park. I want that park to be there and I want it to be safe. But we have our area, they don't regard it. I just thank you for your time.
May I ask her a question?
Thank you. Yes.
Which city official denied your donation for the security camera?
Ooh. Okay, it's been a while. Hold on. Let's see. I may have called the police department to begin with because a policeman came out to us and gave us a card and said that it was going to be too much time, it was going to be too much time to put time, I guess, watching it. So I said, well, if it's taped, you can go back and get, here's your license plate. This is a little bit before I got more involved, I'll say. But we did. And when I talked to somebody a 3 months ago, and I said, well, we're the ones who offered. She goes, I know, and we really appreciated it, but they didn't do it. So I'm sorry, I don't have a name.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak about this matter? Okay, seeing none, turn it over to the commissioners. Do you have questions for Jeff?
Go ahead.
Chair, please, I have a couple of questions on the plan, if I might.
Yes.
I was a participant in this, and I really admire the engagement process we went through, and I think comments like this and having the public engaged in this is what makes the plan work as you guys have put it together. And so I really do appreciate being part of the process and seeing how it worked. First question I have for you is that there's been a little discussion here about security a little bit. I think to the newly remodeled Jean Leahy Mall, they've upped the security in that. Can you talk a little bit about what you would envision at some of the more key parks in this plan and how security has to move forward, just with park technology in general?
Sure. So Jean Leahy Mall is a bit different in that it has private security that maintains that. But early on in this plan, when we interviewed the assistant police chief and then police officers, they talked about their routine patrols and what they observed, and they were mostly interested in a more of a systemic solution, which is through the design and activity, much like the previous comment, as far as addressing the safety and security issue. But looked at security and safety from also the conditions of the equipment, so that's a safe experience, from injury. But as far as other addressing security in the plan, it continue to have that partnership and engagement with the police and community-based organizations just to continue to use this. So there's a portion of the plan that's around partnership and programming. So we have a list of recommendations of different activities, things that could be completed in different parks that would continue to provide engagement. But there really isn't anything around the technology from a camera perspective or anything like that.
I think if I recall in the plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was some discussion though about as people use the parks to have a safe environment while they're there participating, whatever hour the park might normally be used. So is that correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I mean. And then lighting, additional lighting, and moving some uses that are maybe more obscure in a park in the back corner. If that's a use that's of interest and value, we heard, then we wanted to bring that use more front and center where it's more easily observed, and then it's just less likely to have activity that we don't want and to drive that out.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple additional questions. Is it
Go ahead.
permissible to continue? I have a question, and I'll just kind of go through them. I don't have that many comments. You guys have picked them all up through the engagement process. I think on your slide 15 at the bottom, if you could elaborate a little bit on, you make a statement about enhance economic success center and project Bellevue's natural and green spaces. When you say center, a lot of people may not know what that means. If you could just elaborate a little bit about, in park expert technology, what that means.
Can you clarify? You said economic center?
Yeah, it says economic success and center and protect Bellevue's natural green space. So I'm curious how the word center is used. Is that, sometimes people say they feel centered, sometimes it's the center of Bellevue. How are you using that word?
Mr. Jacobson, what page was that on?
That's on page, I believe, 15 under...
Of the plan?
Yeah, under
At the
history.
beginning of the plan?
Yeah. Actually, the very last sentence.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. So I could use Zoom, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
That last paragraph there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. There's what we heard from the stakeholders, and especially the Chamber of Commerce, is that so today in Bellevue, it's not that there's new economic development that's locating in Bellevue because there's a park nearby, but it's an additional amenity that employers are looking for to say you take lunch, you come early, and use that park. So that tying the proximity of parks to economic centers as another benefit of parks in the system.
Okay. Appreciate your patience in getting to that.
Yes.
That's what I was kind of driving.
But that is something, though, that would say that was recognized that today that isn't the case, but as the identity of Bellevue continues to grow and around the adventure and outdoor and healthy activity and lifestyle, that would be what is continuing to attract new economic activity. So it's definitely sets a vision for it in the future. Yeah.
What I saw as an example, and to put words in your park plan, is that the PayPal campus is somewhat of an example where they actually constructed a park next to an economic development area,
right?
And seems to make that property more desirable. Yeah. In general, I had a question on way back at the on your study on the recommendations for like the West Central Zone and the Southwest Zone recommendations. That would be, I think it's page 102 of that. I was just curious how you came up with some of the numbers and analogies on the demographic side of the chart on the bottom left side of that, and that's the West Central Zone.
Yep, that's from the most recent American Community Survey or the 2020 census data.
Okay. You listed that the projected growth was like in that area 0.83%. If my math was correct, that's 49.673 households or something, but let's round it to 50 for discussion's sake. Are you looking for, 50 in that area of just households?
Yeah, it's like sort of taking the overall growth projection and taking the number of households in Bellevue in that zone, and then allocating that portion of the growth towards here.
Do you think 50 is optimistic or pessimistic? We've seen some housing developments approved like Lakewood Village West that is literally going to be hundreds of households. So that would be way more than the 50. So do you think that number is just right out of the census, or how did you?
Yeah, it's tied to that data.
Okay. Yeah. So if things that have happened since the census data, like Lakewood Village Edition.
So
properly
capture in new development.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily capture that growth rate.
Right.
To build on that, then looking forward, then how long do you envision this plan of staying in place until it has to be revised? So in this case, like the numbers need to get freshened up, which is true for any plan. So it's not a ding.
So the goal is that the portion would be kind of looked at and refreshed maybe every 5 years in the plan. You wouldn't create an entire new plan every 5 years. No, not at all. But the part of the data, as the new data comes out, that would be represented into the plan every 5 years.
Okay, great, thank you. Question for staff on all this is that the intent, from what we've heard, is to take this plan and incorporate it into the comp plan and transportation plan. We're going to lift sections out of it, or is the philosophy get written into these other plans that are drivers?
Yeah, I think the philosophy is that, you know, it is incorporated by reference, and yes, pieces of this plan will make sure that they match up as we embark on, you know, updated comprehensive plan and long-range transportation plan. So, you know, when this plan is adopted, that will definitely need to be incorporated into those other documents.
Okay, and then by reference, this plan stands alone, but the reference is back to
Correct. I mean, it'll stand alone, but again, we will
incorporate.
Yes, we will look at this document when we do those other studies to make sure that we're consistent.
Okay, great. I think all the gathering of the data on the park system in one place is invaluable. That's why I was curious about how do you continue to keep it a living document as some of the other ones, plans and stuff, change.
Another way I wanted to look at keeping this living document is, you know, there's a new parks board, like re-engaging parks boards, and this could be the document that part of their role would be to keep this plan being activated and implementing portions, and so that would be a group that could basically feel a sense of ownership in the implementation.
You mentioned the GIS and online reference, and I think from what I recall in the plan, the intent is to basically, because of the amount of data that you guys have captured, is to move this online.
That's right. It's a live web map, and so it would be hosted. It would be given to Bellevue to share that link, and then they would go to that GIS map online.
So it would be a tool both for the public, but also then for people that are developing or work around, like the Planning Commission.
That's right. All of the data would be in spreadsheets and shape files that the city and the county can use, but then there's a more publicly accessible GIS database.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, we've closed the public hearing for now, but yeah. Did you have a question, Commissioner Ackley?
Yeah, Jeff, I guess in terms of the implementation plan in the back of the package, again, the theory would be that if the city adopts this, then those expenditures over the 6-year period would get folded into the CIP in terms of a planning tool.
Yeah, they could be used for reference when, you know, Tammy and Dave and the administration puts together their 1 and 6 year plan.
How about on the decommissioning? I don't recall seeing a timeline there. It was mostly here's 7 or 8 parks that probably could be gone away with. Is there a timing that's tied to that as well, or?
That's, you know, to decommission is really tied to what is it that park is now used for, and so it's about identifying the best use and the partner in order to take it, and that is basically timing it and when it's appropriate. So that it doesn't say that next year it should be Park A and Park B, and in 2024 it's you know, there's not a schedule for it, but this is the list that you and the council have to consider decommissioning those parks. So it's not written from like a regulatory or policy language around these are the parks that you must decommission. But given all the criteria and the engagement, these are the parks that continue to make the top of the list.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Arnie?
I don't know if this is a staff question or a Jeff question. So, you know, you're talking about partnerships he was just talking about, and kind of ties in with the park she was looking at. I have a son who plays select baseball and recently played at Aspen Park. And the team we played against said that they had either bought or had a partnership with the city of Bellevue to maintain the fields. Do either of you know about that? Like, is that the type of partnerships you're talking about, where you have like a private select baseball organization that's willing to come in and spend the money and upgrade the field and take care of the field to take off some of the financial burden from the city?
Well, that's a model that's used in a lot of communities, and the Bellevue Junior Sports Academy is one that does that in Bellevue today.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't them, but do you know anything? I just don't know.
I don't know specifics. I do remember that there was some type of agreement that was previously approved, but yeah, I couldn't speak to exactly what that looked like, but I know that those agreements have been made in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, in your presentation brought up the development of park corridors. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, so it's like from a conceptual standpoint and mapping, like seeing these parks as connected through trails and sidewalks. So there's corridors, like from, an example might be from Stonecroft Park and then up through Blackhawk Park and to Oakhurst and then up to Two Springs. Like, that is a corridor. It's connected through a trail network as the corridor of parks. So it's looking at, as a corridor, what are all those amenities that are within that 2 or 3 mile trail between all those parks. Instead of saying, I don't have a shelter with grills for a picnic in my neighborhood, but if I see it in my zone and I have this corridor that's easily accessible, well, now it kind of expands my range of what I see as parks that I have access to in my community. So that's the way we viewed the corridor development. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Did you see any, other than like the example you gave of Stonecroft and Two Springs and so forth, did you see any other possibilities within?
Yep, in the Old Town Zone, from American Heroes, moving up to Sorensen Park, and in the Northwest Zone from Swanson Park, kind of both goes northwest. So West Central is Swanson Park, but it moves northwest to Hastings Banner and then to Aspen. And then it also would move to be the south and the east up to, north and east from Swanson Park up to to Sorensen Park as well. So those would be a few corridors that some of these are created today, and others we'd build that out in phases. And then Lakewood Villages area as well would be another corridor of parks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the commissioners or comments from the commissioners? Questions for Jeff?
Jeff, I just noticed one quick thing on page 93 with the Daniels Farm Recreation Area. The last sentence trails off and doesn't finish, so we probably need to look at that and get that updated.
Okay. Yes.
I just noticed that today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I guess there are no more questions, so
Thank you.
Commissioners? Thoughts, motions, comments?
If there's no other questions from the commissioners and nobody else has any comments, I would take the minute to make a motion to approve the master parks plan as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Jacobson, second by Ackley. Please vote. Has everybody voted?
Maybe hit refresh.
Let me try it again. All voted yes, motion carried.
Okay. Any current business? Oh, I should say this goes before the Planning Commission, or excuse me, the City Council on June 20th.
I just want to say thank you to Jeff and Sydney and their team for all their hard work. This has been going on for many, many months, and we appreciate all the time and the hours spent.
Yeah, and I would echo that, and I would just say I really enjoyed being part of the steering committee for this project. Learned a lot, and I think it was very well done. Any other current city business?
Just before Mr. Godigan slides out, just want to introduce him, Dave Godigan, our new Public Works Director. He's new in the position, but not new to the city of Bellevue. Dave, you were here, what, 20 years before? 19. Okay. Then he missed us so much, he came back. So he is back, and we are glad to have him back in that role. So thank you for being here tonight, Dave.
Okay, well, I just want to say that this is my last meeting as a planning commissioner, and I enjoyed working with all the commissioners and Tammy Palm and Diana Van Horn and Angela Curry, the team. It's been a great experience. I've learned a lot.
We are going to miss you, Sue, but yes, thank you for